Welcome to the call today, Jeff, and thank you for giving us a bit of your time.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be fun.
Yes.
All right, great. Well, let's just jump right in and tell us a little bit about how you got started as an internet entrepreneur.
Well, boy, that's a long story, so I think I'll try to cut it as short as possible. But this is actually I got online for the first time in the early '90s, and that was back in the the AOL and the Prodigy days.
Wow.
And and back then I had a passion for the stock market, and I was mostly connecting with people about the stock market and having discussions and stuff like that, and also about I'm a big mountain biker, so I was talking to people about bicycling, but sort of got the lay of the land online. But at that point, I was I had no career. I was Mr. Mom. I was staying home taking care of a young child, and I was actually trying to become a trader, like a stock market trader, but I was just trying to figure it out. But then that wasn't going anywhere because I didn't have any money at all, and it's hard to trade the market if you don't have any money to trade with.
Yeah.
So at one point, we really decided that I needed to somehow start making some money. And I looked at it, I was like, boy, I've committed career suicide. I'm staying home with a kid. This is not the way you build a real career. And I had been in the business world. I had been in the corporate world, but I'd left that behind. So I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I thought I'd go back to school and get a degree, and actually try to get a graduate degree. So then I looked at it, I'm like, how do I get into business school? Because you need a resume in a business school. I didn't have any resume whatsoever. So I thought, if I start publishing something online, like via email, I could just say, I'm a newsletter publisher, and it'll look good. No one will know whether it's a free newsletter or a paid newsletter. No one will know that I'm sending it out via email instead of sending like a real hard copy. So I started sending out a newsletter. The first one went out to just everyone I could think of that had an email address. This is actually sent it out August 30th, 1996, went out to about 19 people.
Wow.
Of those 19 people, one of them was my wife, one was my father-in-law, and one was actually my second email address. But I still counted it. That's how pathetic I was. I still counted it as a subscriber.
Nice.
So in a few months, it started to grow by word of mouth. This is before I even had a website. I didn't know anything really about creating a website or anything. But it started to grow by word of mouth, and all of a sudden I had a few hundred people, and then I put a website up, and then I had a few thousand people. And then I actually got into the graduate school, but by then my business was starting to go, and so I ended up quitting graduate school literally the day I started it. And within a few months, I had thousands of people on this list getting stuff for free, and then I had to figure out how to make some money. And I made a few dollars from advertising, which was really astounding. I mean, I remember the first dollars I made was just like, I couldn't believe it. People paying to advertise in my newsletter. And then I actually decided, well, I'm going to come off a paid newsletter, and that was January 1st, 1997. And lo and behold, I'd never sold a thing in my life before. I'd never been a salesman or anything, but people bought my product. I actually put together this little product launch back then in December of 96 and opened it up on January 1st, 97 and got a few $1,000s in orders, just like boom. And my thinking there was, boy, if I did this once, I could do it again, and I could do it again and again and again, and I might get better at it. And that was, well over $10 million in sales later. Yeah, it did snowball from there, and things have gone well. But that was the start of it.
Yeah, just a little bit of a snowball there from 19 people to tens of millions. That's great.
Right, but I'll tell you what, though, that first, getting off, just getting started and sending out that first email was like, it was a huge leap for me to send out this email. It's about the stock market, telling people what I thought of the stock market. Send it out to 19 people and then publishing, and then actually getting the first paid order. And I think, that first year, all 1987, I think I made about $10,000, working really hard and working a lot. But, that first sale I made, the very first sale I made, and the first little launch I did where I just did maybe, I don't know, $1,400 or something like that, that was way more impactful than, making $1 million in a day, because it was, all of a sudden I believed I could do it, and it was hugely impactful.
Well, I think that's an awesome point that you make, and it's about these little milestones, and the milestones, it's all relative. I mean, I'm sure there's people listening to this going, yeah, you know what, I just got, my first subscriber to my newsletter, and it felt awesome, or I just sold my first $10 ebook and it felt awesome, and that those are significant, and they can be even more significant, relatively speaking, than the $1 million payday, because of the emotional, mental, and confidence payoff that comes with that. So that's a great point.
Absolutely.
Well, now these days you're well known in marketing circles for your product, the product launch formula, and you kind of hinted at it there that you'd done your first product launch back in '96, just a little thing, and now that's a process that's grown and organically become this great system that lots and lots of entrepreneurs have used, including ourselves. Maybe tell us a bit about what is the product launch formula and where that idea originally came from.
Well, the product launch formula is basically, there's this product I created that teaches this process, this product launch process, where you use that to roll out a new product, to release a new product, or to re-release a current product. Really, you can use it to launch an entire business. And it's this process where a lot of times people, they'll get an idea for a product, they'll work really hard on the product, they'll work really hard on an ebook or a membership site or something like that, and then they get it done, and they get it done, and they get it edited, and they get it proofread, and now your ebook's done. And they think they're done at that point, but really that's just the start. I mean, you haven't done anything except for created a document until you start selling it. And a lot of times people would get to there, and they would think the race is won. They put their website, and nothing happened. And what the product launch formula does is it gives you a process where you actually roll that product out. And typically what you're doing is before you even release it, you're starting to tell your prospects in the market and the public about it, and you're giving them hints, and you're building up this anticipation ahead of the launch and getting people really excited and creating this conversation in the market about your product, so that when you release it, it's just a huge influx of sales. Our typical goal is that for an ongoing business, this would be for a brand new business, but for an ongoing business, that when they do their launch in that first week to 7 days, let's just say the first week, that they will do the kind of sales that they would normally do in an entire year. So they'll suck a huge chunk of money out of the market right from the get-go. And, of course, that gives you massive momentum. That gives you, obviously, the cash flow. It gives you the positioning. The market also knows who you are, generally attracts in partners and affiliates. All kinds of good things happen besides the big dollars, but the big dollars are really, really nice. And in terms of where the evolution of where it came from, you're right. It sort of goes back to that story I just told about me starting out, and I never have been a salesperson. If you asked me to line up every career in the world and rank them by the odds that I would fit in that career, selling stuff would be like the last one I would have ever picked. I just had no comfort in that. I'm a natural introvert, and I had no sales experience, no sales training, never thought about it as a career. And so when I got in a situation where I'm publishing this newsletter, I'm like, okay, now that I've got these thousands of, a couple thousand people getting my email, my newsletter, I'd like to sell them something. How do I do that? And I was sort of scared to ask them. It was like I was scared to ask them for money, And I just didn't know how to do that. So what I did was I created this process where I basically romanced them for a couple of weeks, and I gave them a lot of great free stuff and talking about what's coming. And then by the time we got to the launch day, I didn't have to give them a big hard pitch. And I just sort of said, okay, it's available now. And then the orders came in. And it's a very 10 years ago or 5 years ago or a couple of years ago, it would have been a very counterintuitive sales process. Every person who's like an experienced salesperson who has been through sales training would be like, that's like the stupidest thing you could ever do in the world, what you're trying to do. But I think the online environment is so different, and we're all in conversations all the time, and we're in conversations via email and blogs, Twitter and Facebook, blog comments, webinars. We have all these conversations. People are just used to more of a conversational approach than a hard sell. And certainly some people do well with hard sells, but for the vast majority of people, this is a more natural, organic, use the word organic, a more natural, organic way to lead people into the sales message. And the beautiful thing is you're allowed to not allowed to, but because of the time you take and because of the interactivity of the online medium, it becomes this organic conversation where people end up, almost asking to buy from you.